And we can move on to the next question. So the next question says that the demand schedules for such products as eggs, bread, and electricity tend to be 1. Perfectly price elastic, 2. Of unit price elasticity, 3. Relatively price inelastic, or 4. Relatively price elastic. Okay, so when we're looking at these things, there's two things we want to know. First, what is elasticity, and what does it mean to be relatively elastic, relatively unit elastic, or relatively inelastic? Second, which kind of elasticity would be common to all three of these goods? The answer to that first question is elasticity simply refers to responsiveness of demand, quantity demanded to a change in price. We can write elasticity with the following formula. Percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. So for a change in price, what is the proportional change in quantity demanded for this good? And so when we call a good relatively elastic, we're saying that the good has an elasticity greater than 1, where the good is hyper responsive to changes in price. A 1% increase in price would cause a larger than 1% decline in quantity demanded. A 1% decline in price would cause a larger than 1% increase in quantity demanded. So people tend to over-respond to elastic goods when price changes. That's the opposite of inelastic goods, where we're saying that elasticity is less than 1. When a good is inelastic, we're saying that people are relatively irresponsive to changes in price. If there's a 1% decrease in price, there's less than a 1% increase in quantity demanded. But if there's a 1% increase in price, there's less than a 1% decrease in quantity demanded. So demand is a little bit less affected by changes in price when you have an inelastic good. Finally, we have unit price, which is we're saying elasticity is equal to 1, and that simply says that you're having proportional changes in overall demand. That a 1% increase in price is going to be met by a 1% decline in quantity demanded, and so on and so forth. And so when we're dealing with and finally, if you have a scenario called perfectly price elastic, where elasticity is equal to 0, and so if elasticity is equal to 0, that means any change in price causes an infinite change in quantity demanded, basically saying that price cannot change, that there's only one price for the economy. And that's what we would see in, for example, a perfectly competitive economy, where your demand is, each firm is a price taker, not a price setter. Okay, so now we understand the different types of elasticity. The next thing to say is, what is common about all of these goods that they've listed in this problem? And then what kind of elasticity might we expect to see with these goods? So eggs, bread, and electricity, the first two are food, the second is utility. It seems to me that these three types of goods are all what we would refer to as necessities, right? Or almost necessities. You need food. It's a regular, and most families buy eggs and bread every single week. Most families pay for electricity every single month. It is something that you don't buy on a rare occasion. It's something that's a regular purchase. So in that sense, if a consumer is regularly buying a good, that implies that that good will most likely be relatively inelastic. The reason for that is because it's less likely that consumers will really modify their consumption behavior when the prices of these regular goods change, because they buy them all the time. And so in that sense, we would expect the correct answer to be 3. The demand schedules for such products as eggs, bread, and electricity tend to be relatively price inelastic. So elasticity less than 1. Let's take a look at what the previous tutor has said. So the previous tutor said 3, relatively price inelastic. And they said that products such as eggs, bread, and electricity are essential commodities vital for our survival. We require these goods and services to satisfy our most basic needs. Our responsiveness in terms of quantity demanded to the price of these products is low, since the degree of our necessity is high. Demand for these commodities tends to be relatively inelastic, as changes in the price of such commodities do not lead to significant changes in the quantity demanded. A consumer cannot drastically change his or her consumption of electricity or eggs or milk for their necessary goods. every proportionate change in the price of such goods is followed by a lower proportionate change in the quantity demanded, turning their demand curve relatively inelastic. Okay. So, sorry about that. So the next, the modification I'm going to suggest is that the previous tutor takes a kind of extreme stance. The idea that we need eggs and bread and electricity for survival, that they are essential commodities vital for survival, and they're necessary to satisfy our most basic needs, is not completely true. We need food to survive. We don't need specifically eggs and bread, right? Like you couldn't technically never buy eggs and bread and still survive on other food. And for electricity, we don't need electricity to survive. We would like to have electricity, but we don't need it. So it's not so much that these goods are necessities, more so that they're regular purchases. If they were necessities, then we would say that the correct answer would be one not listed here, a perfectly priced inelastic good. If we simply need them to survive, then no change in price would cause us to decrease our consumption at all. So we would say it's not that eggs, bread, and electricity are necessary, are essential for our survival. We could survive on other food and without electricity. It's that they are regular purchases that consumers make, that consumers will often buy, will often make. They are also things that most people would like to buy, continue to buy on a regular basis. That these factors would lead to a relatively inelastic demand curve if these goods were in fact essential goods, i.e. necessities, then they would likely have an almost perfectly inelastic demand curve rather than a relatively inelastic demand curve. Okay, so we're all set for that.